Hello there, this is Prue, and this video is looking at the new moon that's happening on Sunday. That's the 25th of September. Now, I'm very much aware as I record this video that today is Friday. It's Friday afternoon, and today is the day of the equinox. And the equinox is that fleeting moment where we have perfect balance between the day and the night energies. And now, because I'm in the Northern Hemisphere and we have the autumn equinox, we've now shifted past that moment of perfect balance, and we're now very much in the realms of the darker months. So the night supersedes the day. So there is a call very much to look at the mysteries, our unconscious, what is going on in many ways sort of under the surface. And what I always take note of when it comes to the equinox is that it starts a 3-month cycle off. So this cycle that we're beginning is going to take us up to the end of December. So I always take a moment to think, what's my life going to be looking like in that time, and what is it that I want to do with these 3 months, bearing in mind that there is that sense of harvest, completion. This is a sense of listening to our dreams, our intuitions. What is it? How do I want to shape my life to be in flow with what's going on seasonally? And in many ways, the moon cycle is very much part of that. Because if we think about our ancestors who would have lived their life so much more so much closer to the moon cycle, we are still influenced by what's going on in the skies, whether we're aware of it or not. We only have to look at how does the moon influence the tides. We ourselves are 70% water, so we're massively pulled by that moon cycle. Now, my sun and my star sign are the same thing as in the sign of Cancer. Now, the moon rules Cancer. So I'm very much connected to the moon cycle. And I think once I've realized how my behaviors and my emotions are influenced by what the moon is doing, I can understand and almost plot my life more in harmony. So I kind of grew up with my mum saying I was very moody, and I probably was to her if I look back at myself as a child. But what I don't think anyone understood in our family was the fact that in many ways my behaviours were reflecting what was going on in the moons. So there was some part of the month where I really wanted to shut the door on the world, and I was feeling much more introvert, perhaps a little bit more anxious, and there were other times where I felt much more extrovert and much more sociable. And I can imagine that on some level the family probably thought, what are we getting today type energy, and I guess I didn't know. So I think the more that we can understand, even if you don't have your sun, your moon, or any planets in Cancer, in your natal chart, there is going to be an area of your life which is ruled by the moon. So there is going to be some part of you that has that shifting transitional influence. And the more that you can have that awareness, the easier your life can be. So that's a very long-winded way of really just saying that there's going to be part of your life that's going to feel a little bit up and down, that sometimes you're going to feel extrovert, sometimes you're going to feel introvert. And the more that you can pay attention to the moon cycle, the more that you can understand which part is going to be at the forefront. And the new moon is a time of introspection. So we look up at the sky, it's a dark sky, there's no light. We can often have less energy at this time. We in many ways, there is a pull to go inwards, listen to our dreams, to do less, and to really think about what is it that I want to seed? What do I want to set in motion for the next lunar cycle? It doesn't mean that we necessarily want to take action. It's very much about considering what is it we want to take forward and what is it that we want to leave behind. Now, knowing what sign the moon is in is really important. And the reason that is it shows us what themes are going to be emerging. So this new moon is in the sign of Libra. Now, Libra is represented by the scales. So it's very much connected to balance, and it can really help us understand where in my life am I in balance, where in my life am I out of balance? And those areas that are kind of off or out of balance in the extremes, often when Libra energy is heightened, they become impossible to ignore in some way. So it is important to think about. I know I've said, there's an area of your life that's ruled by the moon, but there's also an area of your natal chart which is going to be very much connected to the Libra energy. And that area of your life is going to be very much under the spotlight. So for myself, this Libra energy, I will find in what we would call the first house in astrology. And the first house is very much connected to my identity, my appearance, how I see the world in many ways. It's often connected to our early years. So I know that for me, this story of balance is going to be connected to my identity in some ways. Where do I trip over myself? What are my ingrained behaviors that cause me at times to feel in extremes in some ways? And that is where my story begins. And it can really help look at plotting perhaps a different way. What different behaviors do I want to bring in that can really help me stay more in balance? The theme of balance, I think about in astrology, is connected to the Egyptian goddess who ruled over justice and fairness and harmony. And in the Egyptian Book of the Dead's, the scrolls or the pictures, they would have an image of her with these giant scales. And what would happen is that she would also reside over the people that had newly died and take their hearts. I mean, it does sound a bit graphic, doesn't it? And the heart would be weighed by a feather, and the feather would represent justice, harmony, fairness. And what was their heart full of? Now, if their heart was in balance, they'd led a kind of like a hope and okay life, they would then granted access to the blissful fields of everlasting bliss. If their hearts weighed heavy and they hadn't lived in a life full of justice, fairness, and harmony, then they were gobbled by this sort of like crocodile, two-headed type creature. So I think there's something about knowing that this is an opportunity for us to take a step back. Libra is an air sign, so it gives us that ability to step back and look at alternatives, look at the bigger picture, and think about what is going on in my life. How are my internal scales? Another thing for us to realize or remember is that Libra is ruled by Venus. And Venus is a planet connected to relationships, love, harmony. These themes, coincide and come up a lot. So it's for us to think about, where am I out of balance, especially in my relationships? Because Venus is very much about beauty, but she's also very much connected to how we relate to others. And Libra does have this gift at seeing both sides of the argument. It can always, it sees the scales, both sides. And I think there's often a saying, isn't it? In an emergency, you don't want a Libra around because they always see both sides. And I think they have an ability in this kind of polarized world that we live in, where it's like, what side are you on? Is there an ability to step back and see that, it isn't black and white. There are moments of grey. So if I was to sum up this new moon in Libra, I would say that this is a wonderful time to stop, take a step back, to reflect on your own internal scales. How balanced do you feel? What area of your life is feeling imbalanced? What area of your life is out of balance? And if there are any new behaviors that you want to bring in, this would be a powerful time to do it. Because remember, not only have we got the new moon, and anything that we start with the new moon very much is supported by nature, but we've also got the equinox, which is a whole 3-month chapter that's beginning. So we can also use that energy too. So the more that we can step back, the more that we can reflect and quieten our lives down, the more we'll be able to flow and really see how life can be when we are connected to something that's so much bigger than ourselves. So wherever you are, underneath this great, vast, limitless sky, I'm wishing you an amazing new moon and hoping that what you seed really comes into fruition when you see what happens with the full moon in Libra, which happens in 6 months' time. That is the time to really look at what seeds you have sown and what you have manifested in your life.